Hello, and welcome to another episode of Move Daily Talks. I'm your host, Tracy Steen of Move Daily Fitness, where we help you move daily in your fitness, wellness, and nutrition. Today, I'm welcoming special guest Sarah Williamson. She's spent the last 15 years coaching and mentoring people who've struggled with their mental well-being and alcohol use. She feels that choosing to change your relationship with alcohol before you hit rock bottom is a powerful and positive choice to make. Sarah's passionate about spreading the message that our lives can be joyful and even fun. Yes, fun on the other side of our drinking careers. And there's no need to feel lonely, stressed, or bored. Sarah is a coach, a trainer, public speaker, writer, broadcaster, and published author. Would you welcome with me to the podcast, Sarah?
Thank you. It's lovely to be here today.
Yes, I was so intrigued when I found you. Your main theme and the things that you talk about and what you like helping women with is this relationship with alcohol.
Yes.
This is something that I definitely have seen a shift in over the last few years. Maybe the last 5 years, it's become very different. And I don't know if that's because I'm aging and I'm in that realm where now we're like, oh, should we be drinking alcohol as much as we did in our 20s and 30s? Or is the whole society shifting their approach and theme to alcohol? I live in Kelowna, which is like the second Napa Valley. So we are wine central here, wine region, beautiful vineyards, lovely wineries, and all of that, right? And I'm wondering if it is a societal change or if it's just a personal thing that as I'm seeing how it might impact my own health, I'm wanting to make these shifts. What are you seeing on your end?
Yeah. I think it is a mixture of all of these things and many other things as well. I would completely agree with you. I sometimes think to myself, oh, maybe it is an age thing. It's really easy for us to say, we absolutely know we cannot metabolize alcohol in the same way that we could when we were in our 20s. I think the generations below us are drinking less. They might be using other substances, they might be having other things that they're doing instead. But generally, actually, young people in their 20s now are not using alcohol in the same way that I was and my friendship group, we were in our 20s. I'd love to think that we might look back on this time in another 20 years and wonder what on earth we were doing using alcohol the way we were. And I wonder if we might draw some comparisons around smoking at that point, because certainly in my 20s, my friendship group, most people were smoking for a time period or to a greater or lesser extent. And now I think in my friendship group, there's probably one man standing still smoking. So might alcohol go the same way? I don't know. It's difficult to predict. What I would say is it feels really good, though, to be an early adopter. It feels really nice now to be somebody who actually is questioning it, who is wondering. The rise of the sober curious movement is an amazing thing. And I'm glad to be in this position right now where we really are able to ask the open questions about it rather than be somebody dragged kicking and screaming perhaps in a few years' time.
Yeah, when you look back at the, 1920s and 30s with prohibition, like
Yeah,
maybe they were onto something.
maybe. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, who knows where it will go in the future, but it is definitely interesting. And what I've seen for sure, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is that there's so much science now behind the impact of alcohol in our bodies. What I wish is that it wasn't so fun and tasty. Like
Yeah.
I wish that there were, I mean, I'm not saying there's no other ways to have fun and tasty things, but
Mhm.
it's not like, it tastes bad, and it's not like it doesn't give you that initial feeling of euphoria or relaxation that a lot of people are looking for. And so
Yeah.
it's a challenging substance because A, it is legal, it's not prohibited currently, and we have instant access if we want.
Sure, yeah. I think there's a very interesting conversation we can have around the idea. We talk about drugs and alcohol. We could actually talk about drugs And the difference is just that one of them is for sale in the shops around the corner. One of them is legal, and perhaps, if we're referring to drugs, more often than not, we might be referring to what's illegal. I will never deny that 20-minute later buzz that I'm not going to pretend that isn't something that happens. That thing that happens after 20 minutes, though, is a real difficult chase. And what you feel after that 20 minutes in, which is that alcohol hitting the bloodstream, is the sugar, we're very often drinking that glass of wine, gin and tonic, whatever it is, at a point in the day when we're already tired, where perhaps we haven't eaten well during the afternoon, perhaps we haven't had enough protein at lunchtime, whatever our own individual stories are. And that glass of wine or whatever drink it is often feels like a pick-me-up. It often feels like the gear change between one part of the day and the next part. Perhaps we're cooking the dinner, perhaps we're moving out of work mode into either relaxation mode, or if we're going out, perhaps into fun mode. And certainly for me, a lot of the work that I did around the time that I was originally deciding whether or not I was going to give alcohol a break or not was about looking at the alternatives and really, what is this doing for me, and where can I go for the alternatives, and what are the actual feelings that I'm recognizing in my body? What are the feelings? What are the emotions? Recognizing that very often I was incredibly thirsty because I hadn't actually drunk any water since lunchtime. So when you knock back that first glass of wine, of course it goes straight to your body and gives you a really quick shift in feeling. But making that decision to actually more consciously look after myself during the day and recognize when I was tired, when I was hungry, all the stuff I'd been ignoring previously, was really helpful to actually getting to a stage where I could then say, okay, what am I going to do differently?
Everyone has a story, right? Everyone has a journey on how they got to where they're at. And then, especially if they've changed that story into their company, their business, their life, their life's passion. And it sounds like this is definitely that for you. So I would love to hear your story and how you got to this spot where you're at today.
Thank you. That's so lovely. Deciding to give myself a break from alcohol took about 2.5 years. And when I look back at that time, I see the real cognitive dissonance I was in, the real internal argument I was having with myself on a really regular basis. I knew, I could see it coming, that I was going to give myself a break from alcohol, but I had all sorts of ideas in the back of my head that ranged from huge stories into little things. So one example might be that I didn't feel justified in giving myself a break from alcohol because I didn't have some kind of huge rock bottom. I hadn't lost my job. I hadn't written off my car. I hadn't blown up my relationship. And it felt like I needed more drama to be able to say, right, that's it, I'm knocking it on the head. And I didn't have that. And thank goodness. What a gift it is to be able to make a choice from a place of empowerment and recognizing this is just not serving me in the way that I thought it was, rather than an intervention and residential rehab and all of that absolutely could have been a part of my story. I'd had what I would call a really quite traditional for the UK relationship with alcohol through my teens and into my 20s. I probably started drinking around 14-ish in the park with friends. Left home at 17, went to university. In the UK, there was a culture at the time that we called the ladette culture. And it was this sort of, I suppose, claiming a place at the table to be allowed to do everything the same as men, and to be entitled to drink the same, party the same, not have any of those barriers that might have been there previously. And looking back, I don't really know what I was thinking. I'm 5'0" and I lived in a house full of men who were all more than 6 foot tall. There was no way on earth I could drink the same amount of them, but I gave it a really darn good
You were
go.
going to try. You were
I
going
was
to
going to give
try.
it my best shot. I really did. So definitely binge drinking, over drinking, and then a fabulous career in London that, the mantra, of course, was we work hard and we play hard. And play was a euphemism for we drink really hard to get over the enormous pressure that we are under during the day. And so it just felt incredibly culturally normal to drink in that way through those years. And looking back, I wasn't really questioning it. There were definitely times when I knew I was doing well. You could point to a hangover as a really clear example as to, why you're not doing yourself any favors. But it was more about this is just how we do things. This is how we party. This is how we bond. This is who we are as a group of people. And I couldn't see an alternative to that. Not that I was looking for one at the time. I met and married my husband in my mid-20s, stopped working in London, but started working locally to home, and had our two boys in my late 20s. I had a significant period of time not drinking, and I don't think I ever thought about it whilst I was pregnant and feeding my boys. It just felt like that was normal. That was a really good reason not to be drinking. And I don't remember ever feeling any problem around that choice not being on the table. But certainly the first time I thought that things were shifting was when my boys were really quite small. It would have been a Friday night. I was sitting on the sofa. We were catching something on TV. The kids had been fed. They were sort of bumbling in and out of the room. The dog was knocking around. And I had this feeling where I thought to myself, oh, this is everything I ever dreamed of. This is me living in this house with my lovely husband, my two children, my dog, in a really beautiful town in a lovely part of the countryside. And then thinking to myself, I'm drinking this drink because it's really helping me to numb out all of this stuff that feels overwhelming. And I suddenly felt really uncomfortable because I recognized that everything I'd ever wished for was really quite a lot to deal with. And it felt all kinds of wrong because I had a job that I really enjoyed, a family that I loved, and I was finding it difficult and could never have articulated that at the time. I could not have had a conversation with you and told you this all feels like too much. And drinking wine at the end of the day just makes it feel slightly easier, and it feels like it's helping me to cope. Now, what wasn't helping was, of course, those mornings where I might not necessarily even have told you I had a hangover, but I certainly had low level anxiety, brain fog, was not functioning at the top of my game. I don't know what you think, but tiny children and feeling like that first thing in the morning is never a good combination. So as I started to kind of pull more of that apart and recognize that I knew I was going to give myself a break from alcohol, I thought what I would do is give myself a year long. I've decided I'd run it as an experiment. How about I stop drinking for a year? I can see if anything feels amazing. If my life is completely lonely, miserable, and boring, that's it. After a year, I can go back to where I was before. I won't judge myself, but at least then I'll have information. I'll feel like I've run through a year's worth of weddings, parties. I wasn't predicting a funeral, but all of the big things that we use alcohol to either enhance, take the edge off, numb out. I knew that there'd be a holiday in there. I knew there'd be Christmas and birthdays. So I'd see how it went. I got to the end of that year, and actually all the evidence pointed to the fact that things were so much better for me. And on balance, the things that I had felt like I was really going to miss out on at the beginning had not played out in the way that I thought they might have done. So actually, my experiment has continued. That was 2020, and I haven't gone back to drinking. I don't say I'm never drinking again, because actually, that is something that I told myself over 1,000 hangovers, all those mornings that I woke up and said, I'm never drinking again. I never meant it in those moments. So it feels disingenuous to say it now, but I'm really happy with my choice to be a non-drinker, to be alcohol-free, to be sober. I don't really have a particular word, phrase, something I pin on myself. I'm really neutral about how I feel about it, but really glad that I made that choice.
So when you had that pivotal moment, and it sounds like it really was that profound turning point for you, you're sitting there with your family, you see your children, the dog is playing, you're having that drink, and you're recognizing right in that moment that maybe you do have some strong emotions beneath all of that. You're carrying the load of something heavy, right? Maybe you're working, you've got a partnership that you're trying to work on, you're trying to be the best parent you can be, you're balancing friendships, maybe caring for sick parents, whatever it is, you've got stuff on your plate. And it feels uncomfortable, right? There's feelings that rise that we know instantaneously will feel differently when we get that 10 minutes, 20 minutes in, like you talk about that ease, that's soothing. And so we look forward to that. So you have this moment and it's a pivotal turning point where you're recognizing that, I wonder if I do this quite frequently. Do I visit these emotions? Do I open up Pandora's box and look below the surface? Do I question how I'm feeling? Or do I just tune it out with a little glass of wine or a couple of glasses of wine? So you have that moment and you're recognizing that. How long after that moment and then your decision to go alcohol free was that? Was it the very next day, or did you
No.
contemplate that for a bit, or how long was that in between?
Oh, that was the 2.5 years bit.
So two
Because
and a half
that
years.
that was the time period that I thought, and shortly after that, I carried on drinking after that in the same way that I had done for a period of time, where there'd be some times where I might go a few weeks without drinking. I always did a dry January or a sober October. Sometimes I might not drink at all during a week. Sometimes I might share a bottle of wine with my husband on a Saturday night. If I was out with my girlfriends, we'd have gone for cocktails, for dinner, for wine, done the whole big thing and felt dreadful the next day. But what I was doing was I was educating myself during that 2.5 period. I was thinking to myself, okay, where are the points where I really recognize that I'm drinking? And I think this is a really good thing to recognize. Where are the times that I'm drinking because a feeling is already a lower sense of feeling? So perhaps, from being really tired, from being overwhelmed, versus the having a drink because I'm doing something really joyful. That's a different starting place for having a drink in the first place. And so during that 2.5 year period, I was recognizing what patterns I was playing out and which ones felt like they were going to be the easier ones to nip and to do something about, which ones felt heavier. Probably for the last year that I was drinking, I never ever drank more than 2 glasses of wine at a time. What I would say at the time was that I'd got to a place where I was really happily able to moderate my drinking. What I would probably now say is actually I'd got my alcohol consumption into a place of harm reduction. I was able to stop at 2 glasses of wine and not think to myself, oh, I wish I could finish the rest of the bottle, or I'd got to recognize that place that was enough of a buzz and then not be able to chase what might not come on the other side of that. I had made the decision, it was about October time, that I was going to actually choose to have 2020 as my alcohol-free year. And so I suppose I was resourcing myself. I look back and I think, what was the matter with me? I think I probably thought I was the only person on the planet who had ever had these thoughts. And I had decided that I didn't want to go to AA. I had decided that there were various things that I'd already closed off myself to. At that point, I was not feeling open-minded about being supported by other people. I don't quite know why. That was just the mindset that I was in at that point.
Was it embarrassment or shame that
It
drove
was
that
both
maybe?
of those things,
Yeah.
and it was around thinking that it was a very I certainly didn't want to tell anyone else how I was feeling. And I think I was playing that record of this next decision that I make is going to make me lonely, miserable, and boring. And I'm just going to have to endure it by myself. Now, I would go back and question the old version of me, but that is what was running through my mind. And in that October, where I thought, okay, 2020 is going to be the year I do it, I will start on the 1st of January, I kind of discovered that there were books written on the subject, the genre that I'd never recognized before, Quit Lit, and started reading some of the memoir type books, which I really enjoyed. Started listening to some podcasts, looked for some of the sciencey books, so educated myself. And then I realized by December that I was stalling, that actually, if I was I mean, what New Year resolution had I ever carried through from the 1st of January? Ever? My birthday is the 4th of January. So let me tell you that most New Year's resolutions last 4 days for
Went
me.
out the window January 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, this particular day in December, we went to a big party round at friends. At that party, I thought to myself, oh, okay, this is going to be it. I'm going to drink my 2 drinks tonight, and then I'm just going to be done with it. And if I make the decision right here, right now, then I'll be able to do Christmas and all of these parties that were coming up and feel like I've already done hard things, that I'll be able to then start January with the knowledge that I've got some of what we could consider to be tricky under my belt already. So in essence, what I did was start before I was ready. I kind of just said, okay, now's the moment. I'll do it right now. And that really worked for me. And it's something I so often have conversations with people about how we set these future goals, and we think the change of a calendar, or a Monday is going to be a better day than a Friday. And so often just pulling that uncomfortable thing really close to yourself and claiming it for right now. What's the tiny change? What's the best possible thing? What's the minimum thing I can do right now that is going to make a massive difference? So I'm really glad that I did that, but it was a long run up into that decision.
You know what I love the most about that is that you gave yourself the 2 years to explore and you said to educate yourself. I think that is, I think that's brilliant because I believe sometimes people will make that choice. They'll have that pivotal moment like you had on your couch there. And then they'll say, okay, next day we're making that shift, we're making the change, and they go cold turkey or they do whatever. And really that's all a part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
That searching, that questioning, that internal inquisition, looking at yourself in different scenarios. You're out with your girlfriends. You're wondering, does this feel good? Right? You're really doing a deep intake of self, of where you're at, of what you want, of how you feel, and exploring those post alcohol feelings. I feel depressed. I feel anxious. I have low level anxiety. I don't like this. Is this something I want to live with? Right. And so you're really gathering data, is what you're doing. And, you know, people will say, if you were to look back at your 16-year-old self and say, what would you have done differently? And then people will like do something completely different than they had to go through. I don't like that at all. And if I were to answer that question, the reason I am who I am today and where I'm at today is because I had to go through those things that were so uncomfortable, that I didn't know the answer to, that I was stumbling through, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
be able to just educate yourself, and it is a process, and sometimes it takes 2 years, and sometimes it takes 5, and sometimes it takes 10.
Yeah.
Not to rush this process. There is a point where you do pull the trigger, though, right? There is a
Yeah.
point where you say, okay, enough's enough. This may not feel like the right time, but will any time feel like the right time? Probably not. So let's just jump in and see how we do, because I've done my due diligence. I've done my self inquiry. I've looked inward. I know what I don't want to be like, and I know how I do want to feel. So this seems like as good a time as any. And so then we move forward without that regret, but also with having educated ourselves and really, like I said, done that deep inquisition inside and readied ourselves for this next challenge.
Absolutely that. And I so hear in what you're saying, that that thing around questioning our values. Who is the person that you would like to become next? Are you acting in alignment? The moment when I was standing next to the kitchen sink and I'd done some yoga that morning, I'd been for a run, my supplements were there lined up, I'd probably drunk a green smoothie and whatever. And I had that thought of, oh, hang on a minute, last night I drank half a bottle of wine. What is the point in the yoga, the green smoothies, one
Counterbalance.
cancelling out the other? Yeah, just how about it's really easy in life. And I think particularly around middle life to start adding things in, adding, the green smoothie, the yoga, the whatever, and thinking that more is the answer. How about we give ourselves a break and cut one thing out? How about we just give ourselves that opportunity to experiment, cut the thing out, and then give ourselves the better opportunity to make the most of those fabulous things that we're bringing in and question. I'm not saying this is a either or choice, but is the yoga better for me right now, or is the strength training better for me right now? And making very conscious choices about what my health goals are going to look like, and does alcohol fit in with that picture of me? That was a really useful thought process to go through, and yeah, was part of that 2-year part of the planning.
I agree. There is definitely seasons for everything in terms of adding things in, taking things out, and to understand that and have compassion for where you're at in the season of life, because it ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
This too shall pass, and we'll move into a new season where maybe we have more clarity. So you're with your friends, you're having fun. You've decided that you're not drinking, but they're all drinking. The worst thing, well, maybe it's not the worst thing, but when I'm not drinking for whatever reason, and typically that's my stance now. I don't drink a lot. I will have the occasional bubbly because I like that, but mostly, for my health and because what I know of alcohol and its impact in the brain and everything else, I don't want to include it in my life as often as I did maybe in my 30s, 20s, 30s. But you're there with your friends, they're drinking because they're not on the same page at this point. And what's that like? They seem to be elevating in their volume and things are fun and funny, even if they're not funny. And you're there on this, are you on the sidelines? What's that like then to be included in a group of your friends or a festivity and you're now not drinking? What's that like for you? And do you have some thoughts or suggestions on how we can be present in moments like that if we decide not to drink?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good question. I would say at the very beginning, I was awkward about myself. And if I could compassionately go back there and say to that past version of me, it's okay for you to claim this. It's okay. You don't actually owe anybody an explanation. But I really felt like I did have to explain myself. And I made it really complicated for myself so many times. I would say that excellent reasons in the past not to have been drinking might have been being pregnant, being on antibiotics, being the driver, or somebody might behind your back say, oh, she's not drinking because she's got a problem with alcohol. And all of that stuff feels heavy and feels hard. Where have we got to that we can't just say, oh yeah, no, I'm having tonic tonight, or I'm having, fizzy water, or whatever your thing is. So I've got various different circles of girlfriends, and some felt more comfortable than others. I suppose that would be my main thinking around the time, was that some of the big drinking nights out did just feel less comfortable. But what I would say is that once everybody else has had their first drink, they completely don't give a monkeys about you and what you're doing, and everybody is concentrating on their own thing. So if you can ride that internal anxiety, discombobulation, whatever it is you're feeling, you'll be fine 15, 20 minutes in. I definitely use strategies and techniques. Like if I was meeting my girlfriends in the pub in town, I would make sure I actually got there 15 minutes early and ordered a tonic, but in a gin glass with all the lovely straw, ice, all of the stuff. And if you look like you're drinking a gin and tonic, nobody questions it. Actually, everyone is concentrating on getting their own drinks, making their own orders. Nobody is asking the question, what gin have you got in with your tonic?
Yeah, exactly. Tell me the brand name. What is this culture that we can't just have soda water without people needing us to be doing what they're doing? What is that about?
Oh my goodness, I think it is so much about permission, and it is so much about where previously we might have collectively been allowing ourselves to engage in a behavior that wasn't good for us. But by encouraging each other and justifying it by all doing the same behavior, we gave ourselves, I don't know, some level of permission or justification, or allowed ourselves to not feel bad about those choices. And certainly there are, I had girlfriends who, once I had said, this is, going to be a year-long experiment for me, they just, I don't know if allowed is quite the right word. They allowed me to just get on with it. I might have had to say it a couple of different times, but then the interest in the conversation, the subject was gone. And I think the thing I found most difficult was people would either say to me, there were two kind of different responses that I got regularly. One was, oh, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I should probably do that as well. And the other one would be, oh, right, yeah, that's interesting that you're doing that. You see, I don't need to do that because usually what I just drink is, a bottle of wine. And the things that people put back on you, ask you a question and then tell you why they're okay, which makes you then feel like you've got some kind of problem or you need to justify your choice further. I did lose one friendship out of it. And with hindsight, that probably what had been a while coming, and our relationship absolutely had been based upon being in a bar together, sharing the wine, having a raucous time, and actually our friendship was not any more depthy than that. And so whilst I had some feelings of hurt and sadness at the time, it was just a relationship that had run its full course, and I don't feel the loss of that anymore. And I would say actually what's happened over the last couple of years is our general way of socializing has changed in some ways. So a few of my girlfriends, we're really into long distance walking, and we would rather spend the day together walking 30 kilometers, dogs, chatting as we go, tea shop and cake on the way, lovely things packed for lunch. And the beauty of that is that you have conversations that you remember. You really look out for each other. You're able to come back the next week or the next time and say, oh, how did that thing go at work? Or how are you feeling about that? Because none of that is lost in blackout. None of that is lost on that night out that you then forget that friend is having that difficult time about something. So I would say that's a real gift, being able to deepen standing relationships.
I love that point, and I totally concur. We do there's a group of us that celebrate each other's birthdays, and we hike. It was my birthday last week. We did pickleball and brunch, and it's something active. It's something we do together. We almost always, do hikes instead of getting together and just drinking. And it's just so meaningful. One thing you said, it just kind of brought me back to my an experience years ago too. I would remember going to like Appy's at a friend's house, and you're drinking and you're there for 4 or 5 hours. And sometimes I would come home and go, I talked for 5 hours and I don't have a recollection of anything meaningful that I talked about. How did we spend 5 hours in conversation? And I can't recall what we talked about. And I would sit there the next day thinking, trying to rack my brain. Well, what was one of the conversations? I don't remember. But 5 hours of conversation is a lot of conversation that you can get through and not remembering, like, how futile. What's the point? And
Yes.
I love what you said about just going for walks and talks. It's a twofer, we call it 2 for 1. So you get your exercise, and then you're also having these conversations where you get moments to share your own story, your personal thoughts, beliefs, feelings, emotions, and to be heard by your friends. And to me, that is just hands down far more valuable and life-giving than a night of appies where you don't remember any conversation.
So true, so
Yeah.
true. And I think
Yeah, go
something
ahead.
that's really kind of come out for us as a friendship circle through some of this is around the behavior that we're modeling for our kids. We can tell our children anything we like in the world. We can ask them to do, be, or have whatever, all of those conversations. Actually, the real power is in modeling, as a human being, do I want my kids to be able to phone me they're 17 and 16 now? Do I want them to be able to phone me at any time of the night and say, can you come and pick me up? Yeah, sure. I want to be a safe pair of hands like that. Do I want them to see me struggling with something really difficult that's going on in my life, and what I'm doing is drinking wine to make those feelings go away? If I were to be suggesting to my boys coping mechanisms for when life is difficult, I am not suggesting to them, why don't you neck a few beers? Why don't I pour you a glass of wine? So why would I show them with my actions that that's a good thing? And we live in a house. My husband does drink. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'd love my kids to have a balanced view on loads of different things in the world, but I am really delighted that I am showing them that it's possible to be a human being who functions in the world, living a lovely life without needing alcohol in it.
So what have some of the challenges been for you going alcohol free? I would think, there might be moments with a spouse who is drinking and you're not, and you just want to sort of sit down at the end of the day and share your day and crack a glass of wine or a bottle of beer or whatever it may be. What have some of the challenges been? And do they supersede or override, rather, I guess, the benefits of being alcohol free for yourself?
Mm. Um, the joy of always waking up clear-headed will never get old for me. That the shine never rubs off on that one. So my husband, if he's going out with his friends, he might drink like he always has done on that kind of night out, and I'm not there. I'm not in the, and likely I'll be asleep by the time he gets home. So that feels like that doesn't have a huge impact on our relationship. The way that we enjoy our company together, if we're going out, or we might go to the cinema, we might occasionally go. If we go for a drink, we're more likely go to a coffee shop or a tea shop now anyway, just because that would be our choice. Difficult things for me have been around rubbish drink choices. So, an example of that would be that at a big party I went to last weekend, we walked into the entrance and it was trays of champagne, and there was a big jug of concentrated, warm, unrefrigerated orange juice. And I don't particularly love orange juice. And it was the idea that, and I think society in general is getting better at it, but it's just so old fashioned. It's so lame to think, that there's all of these glasses of champagne and one tiny jug of really something that just is not thoughtful for anybody else who happens not to be drinking. The alcohol-free options in the UK are amazing now. Really, there are some fabulous botanic alcohol-free gins, and some of the wines now are okay. The alcohol-free lagers, really some good things coming online. So there's no excuse really in catering and hospitality not to serve the good alternatives. but I do understand it's a mindset shift. And I think as fewer people do drink, it will have to follow. I think because I had originally said to my husband that I was going to do this as a year's experiment, I perhaps did move the goalposts unintentionally, because not that he was waiting at the end with a bottle of champagne to crack open for me, but I didn't realize this was going to become a lifestyle choice. I think we give each other grace to grow in our own different ways. He's a huge marathon runner. We have different interests, outside of and in our relationship. So actually it's been I can understand how some people would struggle having a spouse or a partner who is drinking alongside them if they weren't, but we've navigated. I think that stuff is around finding your own way through it and picking out the stuff that really feels important to you and the stuff you're going to let ride.
How has this shift, going alcohol free, impacted your other wellness components? Has it impacted your maybe desire to eat healthier, your desire to move your body more? How has that impacted that?
It's had a really big impact. If I were to tell you that I have been interested in different types of exercise for many years, but I've never really stuck at something. So I would do 6 months of a particular type of yoga, then I'd do 6 months in a HIIT class, then I do 6 months in body pump, but I always felt like I was only ever looking for the thing that I wanted to do, but never quite finding the thing that I wanted to do. So if I tell you now that I have weight trained consistently for 3.5 years, 3 times a week, that is such a gift. That is 6:30, 3 mornings a week. And it's easy to do. Well, that's not quite true. It's not easy to do. It's easy to do because I am never trying to get over what might have happened the night before. The worst possible thing could be that I'm tired because I haven't gone to bed and had enough rest. I used to be a real carb fiend first thing in the morning, and I would be looking for the white toast and the processed cereals and the things to put in my face as quickly as possible. And my hangover cure would always have been, fried eggs and full fat, full sugar sodas. I don't drink any of those kinds of drinks anymore. They hold no interest to me. And I think it is because my tastes have changed. People do it sometimes, make the shift from stopping drinking and then getting into a massive sugar habit in the evening because they're missing that component of the drink. So suddenly find themselves with a bit of a chocolate bar habit or a jelly sweet habit in the evenings, or ice cream or whatever the thing is. But I quite consciously chose that I was going to be much more mindful about, I actually don't really eat a lot in the mornings. I'm somebody who enjoys eating really well at kind of 11 o'clock midday. And that's just been about learning to listen to my body. And my more recent, I suppose, development is the right word, is recognizing that in being vegetarian, I've probably spent at least the last 15 years eating nowhere near enough protein. So really with the strength training now, trying to put those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. And I can say to you at 46 that I think I feel so much better than I did at 36. How is that possible?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're on an amazing trajectory. So it's such an interesting thing that one decision there can really shift the trajectory of where you're headed. And I love that for you. I think that was so important. And I think that many women, many people listening are possibly considering going alcohol free. Again, with so much information out there currently about the science behind what alcohol does and stories like yours, I think we all resonate with that because we have those same feelings, right? There's that trepidation of being in a group. I have to drink to relax, to fit in, to say my piece. I have uncomfortable feelings. I need to medicate them. The next day, waking up with the hangover or the low level anxiety, like, oh, who wants that? Like there's a better way, right? And
Yes.
I'm not vilifying alcohol because like I said, I had a glass of bubbly last week for my birthday there too. But I am at that place where I'm certainly considering what amount I want. I know personally it for my body composition targets, it's horrible for that if I want to keep on the same target for body composition. For clarity of mind, for getting more work done in my company and business, it's not great for that. So why incorporate it, right? The only thing is that social draw. But I love some of the points that you said today, just about can you go through those uncomfortable 20 minutes? You're going to probably feel uncomfortable in your skin. Could you just pay attention to that and honor that in yourself? Say that to yourself. I feel uncomfortable right now. My stomach feels a bit turny. I feel drawn to alcohol. Like I want this feeling to go away, but could I just sit with this uncomfortable feeling momentarily, knowing that when everyone sort of eases into it and maybe I have my first conversation with someone, that will pass and then I can go on with my night. So really great insights today. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'd love to tell our audience where they can find you. I know that you've written a book, so let us know all about that and how they can find you and follow your work.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. My website is drinklesslivebetter.com. The book is by the same name, Drink Less, Live Better, and that's available in all the places that books are sold. I have a podcast also by the same name that's 5-minute episodes. And one of my decisions around that was actually thinking of something that would be useful for people at 5 o'clock in the evening if they're having that moment, or just before they're going out with their girlfriends. What's that bit of somebody in my ear that would be really useful? What can I listen to as a piece of inspiration, something to keep me solid, something that makes me feel like I've got a bit of accountability? So they're really punchy episodes that are uplifting, joyful, encouragement in your ear. And I think, the feedback that I get on the podcast is really nice because I think it feeds into that not feeling alone. And the work that I do with my clients, the one-to-one coaching, a really big component of that, of course, is the accountability piece. And so in that situation where you might be recognizing, I'm going to have that uncomfortable feeling perhaps for 20 minutes when I'm out with those girlfriends, but I'm going to come back and speak to Sarah about that next week. What a great thing that is to be able to talk this stuff through rather than holding on to all of that energy yourself. So yes, drink less, live better. That's where you'll find me.
That's a great idea for a 5-minute little podcast nuggets to inspire you, to motivate you, to keep you the course. That's excellent. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today. And for all of you, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to move daily in your fitness, wellness, and nutrition. And we'll see you on the next Move Daily Talks.